everyone, and welcome back to the Gospel of Comics for the Sunday service. I am your host of Church of Failure, and with me, as always, is the trusty co-host Eric McCartney. Who, if you don't,
trusty now.
Yeah. If you don't like this episode, it's all his fault. This was all his idea.
How is it my fault?
Because this was your idea.
It was?
Yeah.
Was I drunk?
Probably.
Well, then it's your fault for going along with it.
Look, man, I just host the show. But anyway, no, we have kind of a long and drawn out, slightly educational episode for you tonight. Instead of talking about any particular story or character or storyline or anything like that, we're going to kind of give you a rundown of some of the more significant events in the Victorian and Platinum Age of comics, even before superheroes, to kind of give you an idea of how some of these, basically how you got the comic book that we now know and love into our hands from, I mean, you could probably take it all the way back to hieroglyphs, but we're just starting at
cave paintings.
Right, yeah. We're probably starting at about 1839 is going to be our, or 37, 39?
Something like that.
But the first English comic that we actually have to look at, I actually do have a sample pulled up that we're going to look at, and it's from the Victorian Age of comics. Before we get into this, though, is there anything that we should do before we just jump into this topic? Maybe give it a minute or two for anybody to get here that's going to get here.
Yeah, that might be a good idea.
Well,
anybody in the chat yet?
No, not yet. We have two watching. What I figure is we do still have this trailer from last night that we didn't talk about. It's only about 2 minutes, so it'll probably take about 5 minutes for the segment.
All right, let me get to the link.
All right. Yeah, we're gonna look at a trailer that came out this past week for a Amazon Prime show. Some of you may remember that we've covered The Boys as a title on this show before, the first volume and a half, basically. Well, Amazon Prime finally picked up the show after it had been in creator hell for God knows how long. Same with Lock and Key. Both of these stories came out and were immediately pitched as television fodder, which, first off, that pisses me off. Like, not every comic book needs to be a TV show and vice versa. I get it, but I mean, maybe focus on making good comics that sell before you immediately start thinking that this is the next big universe idea. But what are you gonna do?
And maybe write some original TV and movies.
Yeah, but from what I've understood is for the last 10 years, comic books have been basically scripts for movies and TV shows for the last 10, 15 years anyway.
Yeah, thanks, Marvel.
So, let's see, what do we have here? Why is it upside down? What? That's not going to work. Okay.
What?
Interesting.
You good?
Yeah, it's just it's being a big pain in the ass. Let's try this.
Yeah. Of course.
Nope, still upside down. Interesting. Don't know why.
Is your monitor upside down?
Yes, that is exactly what it is.
I don't know. Just trying to help.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Anytime.
Give me 1 second while I get this up and running. Maybe my boomer tech issues are going to be the one that what gets people in here before we have to start this. So.
Well, because that's always how it has to happen.
Oh, absolutely. There we go.
What happened to Robin?
Let's start it from the beginning. You about ready?
I'm ready.
Alright, I'm gonna hit go right now.
The greatest superhero team the world's ever seen. The Seven.
Is there anything I can help you with? I'm not gonna piss you about, Huey. I heard what happened to Robin.
You ain't alone, son. Soups lose hundreds of people each year to collateral damage.
I can't stop. I can't stop.
So pausing it at just 25 seconds in, they're already giving you one of the main key points from the first issue.
Yeah.
It looks like it happens outside of a shop instead of in a park, but still, just the fact that they give you that right off the top, that's fantastic. That's going to lead to a petition.
Yeah, the PG-13 version of it.
All right, I'm gonna hit go one more time.
All right.
That's where I mean the boys to come in. Spank the bastards when they get out of line.
Can you control her, please?
You need to unclench your asshole. Why are you two carrying on like a bunch of fucking twins? We got a fucking job to do.
I'm invincible, stupid motherfuckers.
I paused it again at 51 seconds. The first question I have is, why isn't Simon Pegg playing Wee Huey?
That's the guy's name. I was trying to think. I was like, there's a better actor that looks exactly like him.
Well, he was modeled off of
The
him, for God's sake. Like, that was the joke.
I couldn't remember the guy's name.
Yeah,
I was
Simon-
sitting here trying to think of it.
Simon Pegg. I always want to say Simon Cowell, but you know that's the music talent guy. Anyway, 51 seconds, hitting it again.
All right.
I'm the world's greatest superhero. I can do whatever the fuck I want. We're on the verge of nailing these wankers.
I'm done.
Oi, what's Sporty Spice up to?
Who? Sporty fucking Spice. What's she up to?
I don't know.
And baby, not even page 6 of the Daily Mail. You see, when they're apart, they're absolute fucking rubbish. But you put them together, they're the goddamn fucking Spice Girls. The point is, we need each other. We're fucking dead in the water.
All right, 1:30. I don't remember because it's been so long since I read the full series, but I think that might be a direct quote from the book. So far, they seem to be doing the series justice. It feels like
Yes.
they're actually gonna try and capture the essence of the series, but again, I'm gonna have to get through a couple of episodes before I give it full passing grade.
So the lead superhero, what's his name again?
Shit. The main guy in the Seven. You're gonna make me look it up.
Yeah.
It's good.
Either
Go ahead. The Superman equivalent, but
yeah. The actor playing him looks like he is having a blast and is going to be chewing the scenery.
I hope so. The Homelander.
Which will be fantastic. Homelander.
Yeah. The Homelander.
Yeah, that actor looks like he's just loving that role, at least in the little clip that we've seen so far of him.
Yeah. But yeah, it's the Homelander, the Deep, Starlight, Queen Maeve, Black Noir, A-Train, and I think Jack from Jupiter, but I could be wrong. So yeah, that's what we have there. Anyway, let's finish it out. There's about a minute left, and then we'll make final comments and get into the Platinum Age of Comics.
All right.
Jesus, he gives the worst pep talks.
He really, really does.
I can't do this. You just pulled the fucking trigger. Sorry. 7. Earth's most mighty, motherfucker! Please, 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 no, please.
Pardon my French. Fuck those fuckers.
If you wanna be my lover.
All right, that's it. I'm not gonna play their ad for them.
Right.
But that actually looks pretty fantastic. It looks like a lot more.
That does look like fun.
It looks like a lot more true to the idea than Preacher did. The few episodes of it that I saw, I immediately gave up. Hey, Tennessee Marines in the chat. How's it going, buddy? Not a whole lot. We're talking the Platinum Age of Comics now that we have the Boys trailer out of the way. Sorry, but yeah, it looks a lot more true to form than Preacher did. BLT is in the chat. I'm not sure who that is, but it seems to be a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich, and I am always fine with that.
So, sounds delicious.
Yep. But anyway, I think that's going to be a fun show. So it premieres in July, so I'll be checking that out. Maybe we do a review of the episodes as they come out, or a couple of episodes, or whatever.
Yeah, or at least the pilot. See how it's
Yes, everything you just said.
for full issues.
What?
I said, damn it.
All right. Well, might as well just jump into this. Well, to start telling the story of comics has been recorded. You start in what they call the Victorian Age, which is your 1830s to your 1897, in which time you got a lot of European influenced comics, a lot of translated books, and they weren't comics as how you think of them today. A lot of times it would be like you see in magazines where there's or political cartoons even, where there's an image with verbiage directly underneath. And that was what they would call a comic book. And it usually came in a strip format, collected strips from reprints of newspapers and magazine articles that would be bound together and distributed, often translated. One of the first examples of that we have is it's called Obadiah Oldbuck, and it's a very strange name, but I managed
and
to
a
find
really strange book.
right. I managed to find a what is it? Just a reprint, basically, online under the public. What's it called? Public domain.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have the original cover, but we'll show the original cover as well. It originally came printed in a very strange format. Like if you held this book in your hand, you wouldn't think comic book. You would honestly think it would be more of a children's book, something like you see in a library. And
Like a Dr. Seuss sort of bit.
yeah, it was. Well, no, it was longer than it was tall. Like it was wider than it was tall. It was. Now the book itself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the reprinted book itself was printed in the 8.5 by 11 format, with 6 to 12 panels to a page. And then there was
Gotcha.
text underneath the panels that kind of led you along the story. But
Kind of.
Yeah, Obadiah Oldbuck was originally printed, and it was like 17 wide by 11 tall. And
Okay.
there would be 2 to 3 panels on a page. So, and I believe that's the way this was reprinted. So, because this is public domain, I'm not going to worry about pulling it down in between turning the pages. There's a lot of, I believe this is, it appears to be Spanish possibly, or Italian, something of that nature.
Well, doesn't this originate from Switzerland?
Yeah, but it was translated in like 18, 19 different languages
Oh.
over the course of time. It was originally
I was just showing
translated.
that I knew something about it.
Oh, well, yeah, I appreciate that, but That wasn't the that
See,
wasn't you read my notes.
no, I read that before I got your notes.
Oh, okay. I see. I see how it is. But no, these came with, like I said, 2 to 3 panels per page, and I don't know if you can read it or not, but the first one, Mr. Oldbuck, first sight of his lady love, he beholds her vanishing in the distance. And then the next one is Mr. Oldbuck's in love. He seeks to conquer tender passion by study.
And this is the whole book, folks.
Yeah, this is the whole thing of it. But you think of the mentality of the people back then. I mean, this was their entertainment. This is what they got.
Right.
And we're still about 100 years out from the first costumed hero. There are no superheroes. The closest thing you get is like federal agents and detectives and cops and soldiers, Western heroes. So that was one of the first printed comic books that ever made it to America. It's a piece of history. It's obviously very expensive if you get your hands on one, but it's not very exciting to read. So moving on.
I don't know. The part with the rats is pretty exciting.
What page was that?
Oh God.
You did this to you.
I did. Wait, did I read more of it than you did?
Oh, I spent most of my day writing the notes. Yes, I flipped through it to find a couple of pages to show, but no. If I would have read all the comic books that I have from the public domain for this, we wouldn't be doing a show.
Oh,
right
I didn't read all of them, and I didn't read all of this either. I just read some of it. Now, where the hell is it in my reader? Skip it.
Yeah. That's what you get. See, I told you. Thank Eric. This is all his fault. But later on, in 1883, is the next recorded time that we got an American comic strip. It was called The Brownies. The book was The Brownies, Their Book, and that was in 1887. But the original Brownies story was published as a comic strip in 1883. The unique thing about this is this was the first North American comic book to be internationally successful. So this basically did the exact opposite of Obadiah Oldbuck. It started in America and moved over to the UK and Europe and Asia and all of those places. The Brownies I couldn't find a copy of, but again, it's very similar style, it's very similar storytelling. All of these comics are basically
Weird.
moral stories or emotional displays. There's not a lot of action. There's no suspense, anything like that. There were a few romance comics of the time.
I don't know. Obadiah Oldbuck does try to kill himself 7 times, and how much I read. So.
Yeah, but those are really just again they're just little short stories. They're little, I can't even think of anecdotes. Not action-packed superhero slugfest or emotionally driven books like I Killed Giants or anything like that.
I don't know. It was suspenseful. I was waiting for the time it actually worked.
It didn't. Because there was no continuity. That was the thing.
Yeah.
These stories weren't, they weren't sequential art stories in the sense that we know them today. Like they were comic strips like you see in a Sunday panel, except there's no ongoing continuity. The character could have been a pirate in one story and a soldier in the next, and it wouldn't skip a beat, kind of thing. But they became prominent in newspapers and magazines. Usually the Sunday inserts, they would call them the tabloids. But the magazines that were prominent for using picture stories, as they called them, were Harper's, Puck, Judge, and Life and Truth. They started adding Sunday comics, and newspaper couldn't get popular artists that were already in magazines, but a Puck staff member Roy L. McCardle told a few people at the New York World, the then largest newspaper, that he knew someone that could provide comic material. And then we enter what is the beginning of the Platinum Age of comics with the character named the Yellow Kid. So,
Oh my god.
yeah, these are rough.
I tried to read some of them because I was curious, and I couldn't do it. I looked at the pictures, read a few of the words on the page. That's about it.
Yeah. Let's see here. These are all wide format, so I'm gonna have to readjust the window. But oh, there we go. Yeah, I'm even gonna get the page tears in there. That's fantastic.
It's just an OBS effect, folks. Don't believe him.
Oh man, you can't even get the whole thing in there. That's great. There we go. Yeah, Hogan's Alley, Folk in the Surf. Look at all that. Now, the Yellow Kid is obviously the child in the middle with the yellow poncho type gown on that is written all over. Those are your word bubbles.
And you might have a paragraph up in the corner of some of the pages.
Right. But there were, like, text bubbles didn't exist, so a lot of times you really had no clue. We got a kid that looks like he's drawing on a wave of water. A very prime example of some blackface up here in the upper left-hand corner. let's not overlook the blackface.
Some like horror movie lady just like hovering inside a wave, crashing over top of her.
Yeah. It looks like this guy on the right-hand side's got a fish down his throat. The Yellow Kid is leaking from his ears, his eyes, his nose, his mouth, and his hands, it appears. Beware of pickpockets and things. So pickpockets aren't even people. Keep off the grass. Us poor kids has to always meet this sign. Yes, folks. This is the quality you got in your newspaper and your magazine in 1896. Colored supplement, if you will. If I'm not mistaken, this is one of those old 4-color prints as well. You got a red, a blue, a yellow, and a black. Oh, yeah, and then several halftones because your yellow and your red makes your browns and oranges. So, yeah.
Oh, and there's some naked kid being forcefully dragged into the water by some chick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's not going to go. But the real tragedy is how many clothes this dog is wearing. More than some of the children.
Yes, but less than those crazy women that get those tiny dogs that they carry around in purses. So.
But yeah, so this was a strip titled Hogan's Alley. Hogan's Alley was very unique in the sense that I believe it was created after the name of a song. Richard F. Outcault, Outcault.
I looked at that name so much trying to figure out how to pronounce it.
Yeah, Outcault is what I'm going with. He did a picture of street children on June the 2nd, 1894. See, it's hard to say 18. Like, things that old just don't apply to me. I'm not that much of a boomer. But he did the picture of street children on June 2nd, 1894 for the edition of Truth magazine. You can see the Yellow Kid in this image, which I couldn't find a copy of. But you can see him in the image of black and white without the yellow, obviously, and text beneath the image. Outcault would come to the newspaper and create Hogan's Alley, featuring prevalently the Yellow Kid. That is what he was deemed, even though he wasn't ever given a title by the creator, but the New Yorkers that read the newspaper strip would deem him the Yellow Kid. and he would also have the yellow gown with words on it in the majority of the strips he was featured in.
So now there was one page that I did like and find kind of amusing.
Which one's that?
It's in the file, The Yellow Kid, 1897, page 29.
Okay, let me get that pulled up. Why don't you?
Around the World with the Yellow Kid is the volume, or at least the one I downloaded.
Okay. Yeah, I got it right here.
Okay. I don't know. I thought it was funny.
Page 29, you said?
Yeah, with the goat.
Okay. All right. How the goat got killed
right there.
entirely.
Yeah.
Yep.
I
Alright.
I don't know. It made me laugh. It was just I don't understand anything that's happening on this page, but it's super random and really weird.
Let's just read through it here. Bill seems to be looking for trouble this morning. Don't hurt him, Bill. He is a Tammany man. The goat ran into the cigar thing, and poor Bill, I'm sorry for him. He was good to me when I was sick. And it looks that he's wearing a pendant with 2 other yellow kids on it.
Right?
So far we've seen blackface and an awful depiction of Native Americans, and this cop just let all of this happen.
Yeah, and just some random constable standing behind a corner watching him creepily, like he's gonna snatch the kid up.
Right. Yeah. Now that the goat's dead, that's what you do.
Yeah.
The goat is not just dead; it is KILT entirely, kilt entirely. So, but yeah, this is what comics were back in the 1800s, and they're the descendants of what we see as comic books today. We're gonna get into the Platinum Age here right in a second. Actually, that is technically part of the Platinum Age, but
to be fair, inbred descendants of the comics we know today, but descendants nonetheless.
I wasn't gonna go there, but now that you have, a title called "The Yellow Kid in McFadden's Flats" in 1897 was 196 pages long, square bound, black and white, when it was cost a grand total of 50 cents, and it was bound at 5.5 by 7.5 inches, so it was more of the standard comic book shape. Hold on one second.
But yeah, folks, while he's doing whatever.
I'm good.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know what was going on. Mr. Church was talking to one of the young ones. I didn't know if I was picking it up or not. But anyway, where was I? Oh yes.
I don't know. I kind of want a poster print of the goat got killed entirely to hang up on my wall.
Is that really where your desires lie from this?
I'm so intrigued by that one page. Well, by that whole Yellow Kid series in general. I'm just intrigued by it, but I can't. I tried to read some of it. I just can't. The language is too weird to follow, and it's so disjointed. I can't even follow what's going on in it. And I love weird stuff like that.
Well, let's just say, if I was in 1913, which was a few years after 1897, obviously, and
really?
Oh yeah, you didn't know?
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah. That item from 1913 that cost 50 cents would cost about $13 nowadays. And we're talking about a 200-page trade paperback size book.
Jeez.
That's direct
That's
inflation from 1913.
that's really cheap.
Yeah, $13 for your 200-page trade paperbacks. Considering most trade paperbacks don't run more than 150 pages and cost about $25.
Yeah.
I mean, we're starting to see the issue as we go along here. But I'm going to do that a couple more times with a few more dates, just so we can kind of touch on that. But that was
Yeah.
that was the Yellow Kid that was published in a very similar comic style format, trade paperback. Back in the day, color printers didn't run like that until later on, during and after the Depression. But we'll get there. 1899, you had the publishing of a hardcover 16.5-inch wide by 12-inch tall Funny Folks comic. Let's see.
Did we have?
I think I did. I'm looking for it. I mean, I prepared for this, but not as well as I should have, I guess. Funny Folks. No, I got.
We're doing it live.
We're doing it live. No, we only got the funnies, famous funnies, and feature funnies. You'll notice a trend going forward, guys. Just count the number of funnies. That would be created by F.M. Hartworth and published by E.P. Dutton, black and white reprints from Puck Magazine Comics. 1901 saw the first full-color comic book at 9 inches by 12.5-inch hardcover. No known page count, but it was called The Blackberries.
For some context, that's 2 years before Harley Davidson was founded.
Yeah, we're just breaking into the 1900s. The most commonly used format at the time was the tabloid 17 wide by 11 high, including titles like the Katzenjammer Kids, which introduced speech balloons, Little Nemo, which ran from 1905 to 1926, and Happy Hooligan, which ran from 1900 to 1932. Now, these are all times of the strip running, not the books. We still haven't gotten into regular comic book publishing yet. Usually when you got a comic book, it was a collection of comic strips from an individual syndication, like a newspaper or something like that, would hire a publishing company to do like the collections of Peanuts that everybody goes so damn crazy about these days.
Yeah, or back in the 90s, you had like Garfield or Calvin and Hobbes would come in those big collections.
Right. Now, in 1902, Richard Altcault, the creator of the Yellow Kid, also created Buster Brown for merchandising. That would lead to the creation of comics as a premium way to sell products. The comic books were an advertisement, essentially. There are a couple of examples of that going further, but we'll get to those when we get there. Mostly full-color, one-sided pages priced at 50 cents, and that format would last for at least a dozen years. Around 1910, Mutt and Jeff was created in a 15 wide by 5 high format, reprinting daily strip by Ball Publishing. That ran for 5 volumes. Now, it's unclear if that citation for volumes means issues or a volume of 12 issues, which was the commonplace back then. But there's also some number fuckery that starts going on at this point, and I made special note of that because it's something that's going on right now. But just to kind of give you an idea, we're getting into the age of, let's see here, most of these are dated, so I'm trying to find something around the correct time frame besides the Yellow Kid, but there's not a lot of scans that exist in these.
Yeah, I noticed most of the stuff
is around the 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
That's when people actually start, collecting comics, quote unquote, or buying them at least, and getting them and keeping them or trading them and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, screw it. Just leave How the Goat Got Killed entirely up until we find something.
There we go. I'll just put that back up then. uh, but in any event, around 1910, people started using comic books as more of a heavy merchandising idea than just a funny papers kind of thing. They saw the value in creating characters to lead brands and stuff like that. Mutt and Jeff did the 15 by 5. Mutt and Jeff and Bringing Up Father in 1919 would change to a 10 by 10 square format with 4 panels per page and 52 pages at a price of 25 cents. So that's a double-sized issue at 25 cents. Let's look at the exchange rate on that. That's what, 1919? We can get a
Yeah.
little bit of a better actual idea.
Now, while you're pulling that up, wasn't this about the time where they started like giving away comics as like free promotions and like department stores and newsstands and stuff like that as well?
It's getting there.
Or is that a little later? Okay.
Yeah. Now, keeping in mind that a 22-page issue costs today what, $4.99?
Yeah.
Okay. This 52-page issue today would inflate to $3.70.
Damn.
Yeah. So in 19
Look at that rate.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's with 1,380% inflation from 1919 to 2019. So
That's outrageous.
So we would be getting like double-sized issues and premium comics for $3.70. Just I'm gonna do, like I said, I'm gonna do that a few times throughout this episode. I want to drive that point.
Oh yeah. Oh definitely.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
So that was a 10 by 10 square format with double-sided printing. I doubt it was in color. Did you die? What happened? Are you there?
I don't know. I lost sound for a second. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I don't know why it's beeping at me. Are you fucking this up, Ayrton? I'm just hitting a stride and you're fucking this up. I seem to have lost my co-host. Are you back? Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you.
All right.
Shout out Matt Christie.
Apparently, I can't reach for.
You can't reach for what?
Apparently, I can't reach for my beer because that's all I was doing.
Bring it closer to you. Your beer should never be that far away. What the hell is wrong with you?
Well, I have to lean like an inch or two to get it.
That's just laziness. The publishing company under there was Couples and Leon. Now, another thing that I want to point out about these books is back in the early 1900s, publishing companies began to sprout up like wildfire. Everybody and their mother had a publishing company. It didn't matter. They published books, periodicals. The printing press was humongous, and it was the best way to make money because everybody had something they needed to print.
Now,
there was even jobs.
Could you say?
Go ahead.
Now, technically, people say like whatever's the greatest thing since sliced bread. At the time when sliced bread became a thing in like 1943 or something, were they saying this is the greatest thing since the printing press?
I believe they called it the Gutenberg, but probably.
All right.
But everybody had a publishing company, and everybody published things. So, 1922 rolls around. You get a good 3-year gap, and Comics Monthly, the first monthly comic. This was a comic book that reprinted separate characters that were reprints from like 1921 black and white strips. It was an 8.5 by 9 inch format, and it ran for 12 issues. Issues number 1 and 12 covered Polly and Her Pals, which was a character that ran in the newspapers from 1912 to 1958. Mike and Ike by Rube Goldberg. I'm not going to make a special note of these names as I read them off. I'm just saying that if you might be interested in keeping track of the names that I say, and maybe there's a common theme there. 1907 to 1929 for Mike and Ike, who look alike. Smatter Pop was a book that I couldn't find any origin dates on because the author and artist are very, very obscure people. Barney Google actually still runs. It is the second longest running comic strip in the world. Barney Google still runs in some publications, yes. It is a strip that is still being published. 1919 to current.
And we were complaining about Batman.
Well, a lot more has been done with Batman than Barney Google, even though Barney Google's 100 years old. He doesn't get full feature stories and trade paperbacks and TV shows and movies.
That you know of. I'm petitioning for a Barney Google TV show, like, immediately.
God damn you. Just say Cool Beans and everybody will vote for it. Fucking traitors. Number 5 covered Tilly the Toiler, which I'm not even going to get into, but that ran from 1921 to 1959, so it was one of the newer titles that was featured in Comics Monthly. Issue 6 was Indoor Sports. Now, this one's kind of interesting to me because it was created by a sports writer who Jack Dempsey described as the greatest authority on boxing. And Jack Dempsey is obviously one of the most highlighted boxers of that era. The guy's name was Tad Dorgan. Number 7.
That's cool.
Number 7 featured Little Jimmy from 1904 to 1958. Issue number 8 was Toots and Casper, which was like a high school comic type thing. Not Casper the Friendly Ghost, at least I don't think so. My headcanon is that Richie Rich became Casper the Friendly Ghost.
There you go.
Yeah. Tragic accident. The face mountain fell on him. It was awful. Number 9 and 10 featured the strip called Foolish Questions. And then number 11 was a double feature of Barney Google and Sparkplug. So no dates on either one of those either. 1926, 4 years later. Again, we're jumping a little faster in time here. Little Orphan Annie.
Hold on, real quick.
Yeah.
Real quick. So, Barney Google does have a song.
Well, by all means, Ayrton, please enlighten us.
I just looking at Wikipedia real quick. So, the initial appeal of the strip led to its adaptation to film, animation, popular song, and television. Suck it. It added several terms and phrases to the English language and inspired the 1923 hit tune, quote, Barney Google, parentheses, with the goo goo googly eyes, with lyrics by Billy Rose.
Well, why don't you find some lyrics and sing that for us?
I'm gonna see if I can find the song on YouTube. Hold up, keep going. I'll let you know if I find it.
All right, we might have a little musical interlude, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So in 1926, we got Little Orphan Annie and Smitty, both at a 7x9 formatted print and softcover and hardcover with dust jackets. These were very popular, and they were priced at 60 cents a piece. So we don't know how many pages those were, so I'm not going to look that up. But 3 years later, the Funnies, which I actually do have some have some little interludes from. We're gonna pull that up here. Just close that down for a second, and then see if we can't find the funnies.
Okay, so I found the song on YouTube. It's a crappy recording of a really old record, so it's kind of fuzzy and staticky, but here's the link in the side chat.
All right, sweet. Excuse me. Meant to hit my my mute button, but didn't quite make it in time. Huh. All right, let me pull this up, and we'll get this little ditty going. Copy link.
You're welcome, everybody.
I don't think they're thanking you. They shouldn't be if they are.
Oh.
Trust me.
Oh, they will. They will.
Trust me. I'm giving you the best advice I can. Don't thank him. It'll go to his head immediately.
It'll go to my head even if they don't thank me.
Oh yeah, probably.
Because I'm just going to infer. I'm just going to infer that they did thank me because this is fantastic. Like I said, kind of, it's staticky from the old record it was recorded digitally off of, but.
Okay. Well, I've got it pulled up. It's 2 minutes and 10 seconds. We'll play a little bit of it and see how much we can stand. So everybody's ready for that. We'll hit go right now.
Who's the most important man this country ever knew? Who's the man of presidents now all their troubles soon? No, it isn't Mr. Nixon, and it isn't Mr. Luce. We're mighty proud that we're allowed a chance to impress Barney Google with his googly eyes. Barney Google had a wife 3 times his size. She sued Barney for divorce. Now he's living with his horse. Barney Google with his googly eyes.
I paused it at 113. Did they just say that Barney Google has a wife 3 times his size?
Yes, they did.
All right. Well, I'm gonna keep playing this. We're just gonna hit go at 113.
Barney Google with his googly eyes. Barney Google that his horse would win the prize. When the horses ran that day, Sparkplug ran the other way. Barney Google with his googly eyes.
Wait a second. I gotta back that up for a second.
Why you do that? Now his horse is named Sparkplug and is an invalid and has no back legs and has like a makeshift horse wheelchair.
Yes, but
Am I understanding those drawings correctly?
Yes, you are. But look at the cover here where it says gambling, horse races, and high-toned women. Comics were a different place back then, Ayrton. All right, I'm gonna hit go at 149. Let's just finish this out. It's 20 more seconds.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you for finding that. I appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
I do. You're not even fired. I'm glad you found that. Yeah,
Oh, that was wonderful.
that was pretty great. I can't even. Where are my notes at? I got production notes for you people.
And then I
Anyway.
had to go and just ruin all of them.
Yeah, whatever. It's fine. It's fine. Nobody cares. Nobody even
We're
noticed.
doing it live.
Anyway, we do have a copy of the funnies to look at. Let's see if I can just get that in frame here. There we go. So this was one of your typical first monthly comics. This is what the format would look like. These are 4 different strips that have nothing to do with one another from the Warrior Ward by J.R. Williams, featured in the Funnies #1. You can see on the bottom here, I know you can't read it very well, but it says The Funnies, October 1936, Volume 1, Number 1, published monthly and copyrighted 1936 by Dell Publishing. Now, this was before publishers would put their names on the front of books because they weren't the company that owned the comic. The publisher published the book for the comic producing company that licensed the comics from the newspaper syndicates. It was a very weird situation back then. Artists would go to work for the newspapers to draw comics or the magazines to draw comics. Then an independent person would form a company or a group of people and license those comics and then take those comics, format them into a quote-unquote comic book, print that comic book through a publisher, and then they would have to go through a distributor if they wanted it to be on newsstands, or they would have to get it into retail, which we'll get into here in a minute.
That sounds very complicated and annoying.
It is, and it was, and it's probably the reason comics didn't pick up before they did. But we're getting close. This is 1936, like I said. So now that's the 1936, the Funnies. This is the 1929, the Funnies that I'm talking about, and it was a 17 by 11 tabloid-sized comic book that had 16 front and back pages for 10 cents. It was known for its 4-color printing and had original content instead of reprints. This comic ran for 36 issues and lost money, so it stopped. And then we enter the Walt Disney Platinum Age. Disney had...
Woo.
Yeah, Disney dipped his hand in comics a few times over the 1930s. Never really super successful. Again, none of these comics were super successful at this point. The comics haven't found their niche yet. But without all of these hiccups in the industry, we never would have had Superman and Batman. And that's why I kind of found this topic really interesting to talk about. So, like I said, the thing that's on screen... Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and everyone knows our love of Disney.
Well, I mean, Disney's done some great things, and Disney's done some awful things. However, I don't think that their forte into comics in the beginning did any damage to the market. Disney was still not an industry giant then, I don't think. I mean, they were big, but Disney World didn't open up to what, the 50s?
Something maybe like 48, 49 or something.
I thought it was 56.
I don't know. I can look.
When did Disney World open up?
I don't know. I guess.
Was it Disney World or Disneyland that I'm looking for first? Disney World opened up in 71, so it would be Disneyland that we would need to find. Disneyland opened in 55. Boom, bitch.
Oh,
So we're talking 1929, and the average going rate for a comic book is 10 cents. That equals. You want to take a guess at what that equals? I'll give you a hint. You probably already know if you think about it hard enough.
give me the price and the year again.
10 cent in 1929. I guarantee you own a comic with this price tag on it. I know 100%
What,
you
$4.99?
do. No, man. Try again.
No.
I know you know this. It's a perfect price for a comic book today. Especially if it was printed on
$1.50.
newsprint. Yeah, $1.50.
I said $1.50.
Yeah, $1.50. 1929, a comic ran about 10 cents on the newsstand, and they sold millions of copies. So, anyway, we'll keep moving forward. Now the numbers are going to start getting a little outrageous, if you ask me. Like they're really going to start making you mad. This ain't nothing yet. But let's talk about Disney's interest in the comics. Disney used a couple of different publishers in the 1930s, and we're actually going to talk about one of them a little later. So, kind of earmark the name David McKay Company. That was one of the publishers that printed the first real Mickey Mouse comic. That was 32 pages. It was 5.5 inches wide by 8.5 inches high. So it was a little closer to the standard format comic book. However, a year before that, Bibbo and Lang published a 9-inch by 12-inch, 20-page stapled together magazine that was a very close precursor to the modern comic book formatting that we know. But it had a variety of like songs and music notes and games and stories in it. So it wasn't just page-to-page sequential art. Then in 1931, Mickey Mouse Comic #1 also came out at 10 inches by 9.75 inches wide. So it's closer to that square formatting at 52 pages again. None of those really did well outside of, Disney distributions or whatever. There's not a lot of high notes in those comics. They didn't really sell bad or good or anything like that.
They were like modern day Marvel.
No, I think they were probably better than that. However, in 1933, Cayman and Blair Publishing and Western Publishing also published 2 different Mickey magazines. The first ran for 9 issues and started at 5 cents, which was later removed. The second was a giveaway and would run for 4 12-issue volumes. So this was the advent of free comics and free media to, I don't know, customers, fans, stuff like that.
Entice people into buying more.
Oh, into buying different merchandise, like we're going to see later on, like we were talking about with Buster Brown and all that stuff. But we're going to take a little segue to a topic that I'm sure a lot of people have heard about, but not many people have dug into. And if anybody's seen The Watchmen, you've heard about this little tidbit of comics history. And these are what we call the Tijuana Bibles. So, contrary to their name, Tijuana Bibles are actually made in America. And they have kind of a tie to organized crime. They were distributed in underground markets, so their exact numbers, volumes, artists, publishers, none of that's really known. And the funny thing is the reason that they could never be distributed was because they would use popular characters or movie stars and sports celebrities to tell dirty stories of naked girls. They were basically hentai before hentai was a thing.
Yeah.
So,
now we have tentacle porn.
Yeah. So, thanks, Mafia. But those would be prevalent for 20 years. So that's kind of impressive for like an illegal underground comic to
Yeah.
to be
It kind
to
of
be
is.
prevalent for 20 years. There's some examples online. If you're interested, DM me on Twitter. I'll send you some links. Obviously, nothing I can show on YouTube, but I do have some examples of Tijuana Bibles. If you're interested to see what desperation porn looked like back then, but now we kind
I'm
of
curious if there's any of these for sale on eBay.
I'm sure, absolutely they
I'm
have
gonna look
to.
that up while you continue.
Now we kind of just jumped into the meat of the story now. So far we finally gotten something that kind of resembles what a comic book looks like now, but we're only up to 1933. Now this is before we really had any strict copyright law, so you would definitely run into issues of copyright infringement that no one knew what the hell to do about because Disney hadn't ruined, IP ownership for everybody yet. But
Oh yeah, look at that. There's lots of these on eBay.
how much are they though?
They're all over the place. There's a collection of 18 of them for $800,
Oh, nice.
but then there's a Betty Boop one for only $20.
Might be a knockoff
Yeah.
or a reprint.
Could be.
But we're just about to get into something that you mentioned to me.
Interesting.
You said you had read the Detective Dan comic that I found, right?
Yes, I didn't end up finishing it, but I got a decent way through, and it was kind of fun.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna pull up the Detective Dan comic on screen, but why don't you give us a little rundown of what you thought of it?
Yeah, it was. Well, I know we've talked off air, enjoying like the old storytelling radio programs and stuff like that, and it definitely reminded me of those. Very narrated, kind of that like crime noir. The character's kind of narrating everything that's happening as it's happening. Very wordy, but easier to read than DC 1 Million. So there's that.
Man, Grant Morrison's gonna track you down and fuck you up.
Probably, but whatever. But yeah, it was definitely fun. I got about halfway through. Then I decided to, try and look at some of the other stuff for today's show, and I wish I would have just stayed to reading those.
Yeah. Well,
But
one thing I do like is the checker pattern on the cover because it's only a one color besides the black.
yeah,
It's very interesting how they use that because you can see that they used like a really light halftone of yellow to give the people some pigment. But on the second page that I have pulled up, I like that they have all the facts and clues necessary for the solution of this thrilling and baffling murder mystery are contained in the story. Turn to page 27 for complete details on how to win. 28 cash prizes, $100 in cash. First prize through third prize, $50, $10, $5. Fourth through 13th gets $2, and 14th through 28th gets $1. So, but $1, I mean, that was 10 of these comic books. That was still a good prize.
yeah. Oh yeah.
But these were all black and white. You can see the wear edges on this particular scan copy. This was a well-loved and aged comic book. It was probably falling apart on its own. But yeah, very
Oh,
wordy.
probably.
Several panels per page. Not a lot of variation. I don't think there are any full page splashes or anything like that. That would have probably been called lazy.
No.
Somebody fired. But then there's an actual story and contest entry. And then there's an advertisement for Secret Service Operator 38 is on the job. Now this was Detective Dan, number Secret Operator 48. So this is a different guy. Just the old ads and this stuff. You'll notice that the Chinese man is the bad guy in Detective Dan. Wu Fang, king of dope smugglers. King of dope smugglers. Not the prince. The king of dope smuggling. This was problematic, ladies and gentlemen. This would not fly in today's market. Do you see how?
Oh,
how
really?
Do you see how exaggerated that poor Asian man's face is? He is the king of dope smugglers.
I mean, it's not that much different than Mickey Rooney and Breakfast at Tiffany's. So,
Well, let's just. Do I need to go back to the blackface on the yellow kid?
is it blackface if it's drawn though?
Yes. If it's drawn like a,
Oh, okay.
a minstrel performance, then yes.
All right.
But Detective Dan kind of paved the way for crime and detective mystery. He was basically a Dick Tracy clone. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
Dick Tracy was already a prominent character at the time, but obviously these guys didn't have the license to him, and they wanted to tell a Dick Tracy story. That's where you got Detective Dan. But there was also a little novella in the background. I like the newspaper. Let's see. With this something words say only regret is that I cannot make the captain's more severe. Judge Fair yesterday sentenced what was left of the bloody guerrillas to 15 years in the penitentiary. Interesting. So there is actually stuff written in these in this newspaper. It's not just copy pasta. So, Wu Fang,
Which is impressive.
Wu Fang, king of the drug lords. You see him in the bottom left of the right hand page, or the bottom right of the left hand page, whichever way you're looking. But
And I mean, the art's really not that bad.
no.
I mean, it wouldn't really fly like by today's standards, but
Well, I don't know. I mean, especially in the age of newspaper comic strips. I mean, this is great.
oh yeah.
However, it was not meant to be. With a 10-cent price tag and 36 pages at a 10 by 13 print size with black and white interiors, this would be a one-off. However, this would be the first comic sold on newsstands with original material in it. This was not.
Now, do we have any?
Go ahead.
Do we have any data on like how well it did when it came out?
Obviously, not very well because it was a one-off.
Wow.
However, in the early 30s, free comics became a popular way to keep the printing presses running during the Depression, where the cost of stopping and starting the machines was higher than printing the promotional comics that would be created in the time. Sam Gold and Kay Kamen were notable mentions of this era that created stories based on Kellogg's Buck Rogers and Ovaltine's Little Orphan Annie. So we're seeing brands with characters license those characters to publishers to create free comics to push their brands.
Do we have any Stay Puft Marshmallow Man comics?
God, I wish. Now, one of the most prominent free comics that would be created in this time frame were Gulf Comics Weekly. They were created obviously by Gulf Oil at the time. Well, created for Gulf Oil by the Eastern Color Printing Company. Harry Wildenberg, as their sales manager, came up with the idea, and they contained stories based on original content, but a lot of it was knockoff content because that's what people did, as seen with
Right.
Detective Dan. But the stories contained within the Gulf Comics Weekly was The Uncovered Wagon, Curly and the Kids, and Smilage. Now, I couldn't find a Gulf Comics Weekly either. However, I'm glad I didn't, because I can't imagine I would want to read The Uncovered Wagon.
I don't know. It could be crazy.
Now, this idea was extremely successful at bringing business to the gas stations owned by Gulf. And they were printed in the millions. And they were only 4 pages, so, 4 pages front and back. And they were a tabloid size, 10.5 by 15. They would eventually change their name to Comics Funnies Weekly, which, the double plural kind of fucks with me a little bit. And they ran a total of 422 issues. Now, that sounds like a lot, but they were going weekly at 4 pages each. So...
Yeah, so a little over a year.
No, it's 52 weeks in a year.
Or 52 weeks. I was thinking days. My bad. I'm tired.
Jesus Christ. Wildenberg also conceived the standard size of the 7-inch by 9-inch comic one day, and he claims he came up with it by folding a weekly tabloid in half and in half again, and determined that 32 to 64 pages, incidentally the same formatting size and page count used by pulp dime novels, would be perfect for comic books. Ledger Syndicate would take inspiration from the dime pulp novels and also release their Sunday comic inserts at that same tabloid size. The first customers of Wildenberg's comic idea, though, was Procter & Gamble, ordering 1 million 32-page color comics. It was published in the spring of 1933 called Funnies on Parade, which used an 8.5 by or an 8 by 11 format, going back to the days of the reprints of Obadiah Oldbuck. And that would be the standard going forward for years to come. Again, 1 million copies were given away in a couple of weeks from Procter & Gamble. They had coupons in the back for Procter & Gamble products and reprinted stories from just different syndicates that Wildenberg had contracts with, based on the success of the Gulf Comics Weekly. So,
Hey, I mean, it's a good idea. If somebody would do that today, it probably wouldn't work because I don't know if people get comics. So good on them for grabbing it when they could.
These were given away, and we do free comic book day around here. You should talk to your comic shop about that. There are 2 free comic days a year. And I'll let you know when they're coming up, obviously. But if your comic shop participates in them, then you can actually get some really good stuff. The first Umbrella Academy.
Well, I mean, like companies advertising using like original or reprint free comics and putting like a bunch of coupons and stuff in that. I don't think it would work as well today as it did back then. That's what I was referring to.
Oh no, probably not. But who knows? I mean, obviously no. It would have to be a digital comic, I think. But I think the idea could still work. What if you got emailed a digital comic? I don't know. It could still work.
Like an Amazon coupon or something.
I mean, whatever. You know, why not do a Betty and Veronica with the Bath and Body Works coupon on the back of it?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it could.
I don't know. We're not trying to market for Bath and Body Works right now. Goddamn. Fuck them. But yeah.
No, that's
so-
Church's day job. He's a model for him.
That's right. But no. This leads to a section that I've labeled the comics bug and the explosion in the 30s. So, after Wildenberg had this great idea and made like so many copies of these comics, because the way it worked is, even though these comics were giveaways, they still were paid for. I mean, it was obviously pennies on the pallet, but they still, you know, it cost enough to keep the lights on and the presses running. So these were considered successes in the Depression age. So sales staff under Wildenberg would continue to grow the medium over the next several decades, including but not limited to Max Gaines, which is a fantastic name. He would work for DC to form the imprint All American Comics. This would be after the Golden Age, and then he would go on to form EC Comics after the Golden Age as well. Keep in mind, we're in 1933. We're 5 years away from the Golden Age of comics, but there's still so much more stuff. Lev Gleason, he became a publisher and started the crime genre with Crime Does Not Pay as a title. Saul Harrison was a color separator for Wildenberg, who went on to become the president of DC Comics until 1980 when he retired. George Dottie Sr. was a printer that went on to start his own comic company under his own name, because that vain fucker. But then Wildenberg would get the comic book Famous Funnies, A Carnival of Comics. It was the second comic created by the Eastern Color Group in 1933 at 64 pages with a 10-cent price tag. So we're at, what, 1933?
You know, with all these titles that have funny or funnies in it, it just sounds like they were just yucking it up through the entire Depression.
Okay. Well, in 1933, the 10-cent price tag gives you $1.97. That was for 64 pages.
Jeez.
64 pages. Yeah. Let's see what I got for let's see what I got for Funnies Carnival or anything like that. Or 1933.
It's just that's insane. The amount of they overcharge for comics these days. Like, what's all that money even going to?
Probably their fuck ups.
Well, fair.
Let's see. Yeah, 1930. I got this one here. Famous Funnies. Let's look at that. So, Toonville Folks by Fontaine Fox. Yeah, that looks good. Let's pull that up there.
That looks
100 comics and games, puzzles, and magic. Magic!
fun. Ooh.
But we talked about some of these titles earlier, but you see Mutt and Jeff, Smatter Pop, The Bungle Family, The Nebs, Highlights of History, Amaze a Minute, Screen Oddities, Tailspin Tommy. None of us know who any of these people are. Dixie Dugan. I can imagine that's tasteful. Amaze a Minute. Somebody's Synog. I don't know. But Donald Dare, the Demon Reporter. Does he not look like the guy from Curious George?
A little bit.
Yeah.
The hat's not tall enough, but
Well,
Y-
but
and it's kind of cool being able to see all these different like art styles and stuff all side by side like this too.
right. Well, I mean, and this is how they were published. Like you would get, like these would all be from Sunday Comics, and then
Yeah.
you would get them in one book a month later or something like that. Just however long it took for them to come out. Yeah, this is Famous Funnies. This is 1933. So you'd get 64 pages in this book. I mean, there's no shortage of how much you actually get. But I mean, it's obviously hard to read on screen. But
See, and if you won that $2 prize from Detective Dan,
right,
you could buy this and have 3 cents left over.
right. Today you could buy it with
Yeah,
$2.
today.
Anyway, these were pushed out at 10 cents and they were published by Dell and then canceled after it didn't make any profit. It was sold in retail and only given away at chain stores for the customer. However, Gaines wasn't satisfied with that because it kept happening and he wanted to prove that you could sell comics outside of just, giving them away for retail. So he took a couple of free comics and slapped 10-cent stickers on them and dropped them off at newsstands to prove to his boss that they could be sold with success. Now, he went back a week later, and the newsstands were all like clamoring for more. They all wanted more because they had sold out. After many rejections, Dell Publishing joined with Eastern Color to print a 10-cent comic magazine specifically for the newsstand, but they were stopped by American News, the distributor, because of the failure of previous comic book endeavors. The two went to their retail contacts in order to distribute their comic, and they named the comic Famous Funnies. It was printed at 64 pages and sold over 400,000 copies in 30 days. Now, let's just put that into
Jeez.
yeah, let's just put that into comparison with today's numbers. Comic sales 2019. And this is from Diamond. This isn't even off the rack. This is what Diamond put together for April of 2019. So
Yeah.
half of these books you can assume are sitting on the shelf still. So let's see here.
At least.
Number 1, War of the Realms. It sold an estimated 187,000 units. That was our best-selling comic at $6 a piece to the shop.
Ugh.
Batman,
Jeez.
number 68 and 69, sold about 88,000 copies apiece. This piece of shit on screen sold 400,000 copies in 1933. And it wasn't even on newsstand yet. I made the comment the other day. Superman's for pal Jimmy Olsen sold 1,500,000 copies when it was printed.
Yeah.
On average. I mean, and that was average. We can't do a tenth of that nowadays. Are you kidding me?
Well, I mean, there's nothing besides like some of this weird stuff we've been finding that really like jumps out. And at least when I get the email of the list of what's coming out each week, none of the Spider-Man titles, none of that stuff is really jumping out at me and making me excited that it's coming out. It's all this weird stuff like Warlord of Mars Attacks.
Right. And I mean, stuff like we've talked about, like The Boys, and, eventually, even though I know, Mark Waid is, a man bitch, I eventually do want to look at Incorruptible because it was one of his better works. I think he was trying to write himself in as the big bad guy because he thinks that much of himself, but whatever.
But I mean, I think that's the problem, especially like when there's how many Spider titles coming out each month?
right now, I think it's at like 6 to 8.
Yeah. Like, how can you be excited for all of those when you could read something like Trump Space Force?
Well, it's not that you can't be excited for all of them. How can you afford to spend $40 a week on comics or a month on comic
Well,
books that are just Spider-Man?
That too. But I mean, that the cost and the fact that there's so much, it's kind of like, man, okay, I'm gonna buy this Trump comic and this comic of John Carter fighting Mars attacks aliens.
Right.
Like,
But
you know, at least I know it's going to be something new and different and entertaining. You know, with the Spider-Man, it could be good.
yeah, could be
Maybe.
keyword there.
Yeah.
Um,
But when you see the cover of Trump Space Force, you're like, okay, this is going to be a fun read.
I told one of my coworkers about that, and he immediately went on Amazon and ordered it.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Had to cough there, so I had to mute. I was glad you were talking. Harold Moore, a salesman for Wildenberg, found an article that touted the success of New York newspapers' comic strips, and he took that as well as the sales figures on the 400,000 copies of the comic sold on retail back to Dell Publishing, or not Dell Publishing, American News, and they finally agreed to distribute the comic book, which, after several issues, started turning a $30,000 profit per issue.
Wow.
Let's just look at $30,000 from 1934 to today. Let's just look at 30K. Let's look at the difference in that. Let's see how much money these comics made then. Oh, that'd just be $500,000. That'd just be $500,000, guys.
Wow.
Nothing major, nothing great.
Right.
But anyway, yeah. So they
And
finally came around.
30K is probably 30K is probably what they're making off of each different title a year now.
So I mean, depending on how much Diamond takes as a cut, you're probably not wrong.
Right.
Let's see. Do I have anything new comics or new? Nah. What have I got? This is from around that era as well. This is Hot Spur. We'll pull that up.
I love the titles.
Yeah. This wasn't even like a real comic book either. Like I'll kind of go through this for everybody, but yeah, this wasn't like a real comic book either. This was released on the newsstands as a comic, but and you got a black cloth mask inside, free.
Ooh.
But this was prose.
So it was a picture book.
Yeah, it was a prose. Yeah, boyhood adventures of famous Wild West. The Man of Learning, Buffalo Bill's Home, The Hard-Boiled Egg, The Alarm, Japers of the Red Circles.
You know, back in 1933, you could have been a radio announcer.
Yeah, I should be. I appreciate that. The Son of Scarface. The schoolboy who is the leader of an outlaw gang. The Son of Scarface. I mean, it just... Look at this shit. This is fantastic, but this is nothing like what we have for comics now. Again, it's still unrecognizable. We're starting to get somewhere, though. Like, there's starting to be a little continuity. 1934 and 1935, two titles come out from Major Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson. Say that 5 times
That's
fast.
a mouthful.
New Fun Comics and New Comics. They were created in strictly new material. due to the fees charged by the newspaper syndicates as comics were becoming more and more popular. They were published in 10 by 15 tabloid format with a cardstock cover. That was something very special then. When you had a cardstock cover, you had something. It was easier to take care of because we didn't have bags and boards back then because this was garbage when you were done with it. I want everybody to remember that. That's why these old comics are valuable. They were garbage.
Well, you were saying that they would read it and then use it to light their fires back then.
Yeah, your parents would take your old comic books and run them through the fireplace for kindling. Or you'd cut the pictures out of them and throw them away. Or you'd recycle the paper for the war effort.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of stuff happened then. Several strips were knockoffs. Again, another recurring thing. Current popular strips. They were drawn typically by veteran artists struggling during the Depression or new artists who were trying to break into the market. They had there were two different comics that had a lasting impact on the industry, and they were called Wing Brady and Barry O'Neill. Now, I don't know anything about either one of those because this was about an hour before the show as I was making these notes. I didn't realize it was going to be this in depth. I apologize, but I do have some stuff we're gonna kind of look through for the different characters and stuff like that.
See, now Wayne Brady, I'm picturing a dancing and singing black man, but that's just me.
Wing Brady, yeah, that's Wayne Brady's older brother.
Yeah,
Much older brother.
I was going to say great grandfather, but
now we're going to drop some names here that we'll probably talk about in the next episode of the Golden Age of comics. But these artists were kind of important to the growing medium of comics, and they worked for Wheeler Nicholson. Walt Kelly, Sheldon Mayer, and Vincent Sullivan were all artists under his employ. New Comics would run for over 500 issues with the help of Golden Age superhero strips coming in, because just because they were created for comic books doesn't mean that these characters were safe from being newspaper strips. Superman had a strip, Batman did. Several mass superheroes had newspaper and magazine comic strips. Lev Gleason, I don't know if you remember him from earlier, working with, what's his name? Weldenberg. But
yeah.
he would get a comic strip syndicate behind him and become the editor of Tip Top Comics in 36. It would run for 225 issues to 61. All with United Features syndicated strips including Tarzan, Lil Abner, Bronco Bill, Captain and the Kids, and eventually Peanuts. So that's where that comes in. Into the Golden Age, Peanuts came about. The title would go on to publish the work of Harvey Kurtzman and Jack Davis. Kurtzman I'll actually be talking about next week with S.K. Barrett when you're going on vacation. Because we're gonna
that'll be fun.
Yeah, we're gonna do an episode on Mad Magazine. He wants to talk about Mad Magazine, so I figure we'll go from EC Comics, from them doing horror and crime comics, into doing Mad Magazine and a little further.
Nice.
So that'll be next Sunday. Tune in for True Boomer Hour when Ayrton's on vacation. And SK and I boomer through a show together. It'll be great. He'll be muted the whole time. I'll just be doing a show without him. It'll be great. But yeah, Harvey
It'd be
Kurtzman
fantastic.
and Jack Davis would later go on to work for Max Gaines. Again, great name, Max Gaines. That sounds like Alex Jones's bastard child name. Max Gaines. The title.
Gotta stop him from turning the freaking frogs gay.
That's right. But yeah, EC Comics would make them very popular. Popular Comics in 1936, which I do have a sample of that I'll pull up.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Hold on to your butts, everybody.
It would start with Max Gaines and let's see here. Popular Comics would start with Max Gaines and Sheldon Mayer. be published by Dell Comics now that they finally come around to publishing comics for the newsstand again.
See, now I want to see how many more times we can justify saying the name Max Gaines.
I've got it written down a few times, so I think I might be about done with it. But Sheldon Meyer and George Delacourt, who was the owner of Dell Publishing, Dell Comics, whatever you want to call it, because he called it several different things. But you can see here on the right-hand page, published monthly and copyrighted by Dell Publishing Co. They were in New York, New York. But
I
they would
really, really love the art of these old comics.
Yeah.
Like, it's just over the top and goofy.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. I love it.
Yeah. See, Dick Tracy has his own style. Yeah. Always belittling.
It's great.
Toonerville Folks, Moon Mullins, Tailspin Timmy, Believe It or Not by Robert L. Ripley, The Gumps, Winkle Winkle. I'm going to go back to Dick Tracy because why not?
Oh, hey, apparently Becky and Matt Christie want you to say Scarface again in that accent
Oh, Scarface.
that you were doing earlier.
Oh man, what was it? The youngster that leads a crime mob, the child of Scarface. That good? That what you guys wanted? Everybody cool with that? I know it takes a minute to catch up. I hope you guys caught it.
Becky says yay.
Okay. My chat must be behind. Oh no, it's top chat, not live chat. My bad. I'm glad I could appease you guys. Sorry, I missed it. I was reading my production notes.
Yeah, I wasn't paying attention either. So.
Yeah, I was just like, nobody's talking in the chat. I'm just gonna read my notes, and then I look back and there's a full going conversation. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Well, Becky messaged me and said, tell Church to read the chat, so I decided just to go read it.
Anyway, this was Popular Comics in 1936. Max Gaines, Sheldon Mayer, George Delacourt, who owned Dell Publishing. I've already shown you the kind of stories that would be in this, like Little Orphan Annie, Tailspin Timmy, obviously Dick Tracy, not Scarface. That would be the book that kind of set Dell up as a successful comic publisher and one of the main comic publishers of this era. A lot of Gold and Silver Age comic books not even Silver Age, a lot of Platinum and Golden Age comic books you get your hands on are going to be Dell or Charlton Press. So if you ever see something published by Dell or Charlton Press, look at it again. Make sure you're not holding a piece of treasure in your hand. Seriously, you could be holding thousands of dollars in your hand if you're holding the right book.
Oh yeah.
But next up would be King Comics. They would be published by the King Syndicate of newspaper, but they would have characters like Flash Gordon, Popeye, Mandrake the Magician, the Lone Ranger, the Phantom. I believe the Phantom was created by Will Eisner. Prince Valiant, Blondie, and Lulu. Blondie being the very prominent newspaper comic that pretty much made it worldwide.
Yeah, now we're getting into the stuff everyone actually knows what we're talking about.
Yeah. So, then you had the Comics Magazine, which this is one of my favorites. It was created by a couple of disgruntled former employees of a National Allied publication, which I know means nothing to you, right? You have no idea who National Allied publications are.
No idea.
Okay, National Allied Publications, aka DC Comics.
Ah,
Right. The fellows were named William Cook and John Mann, and they would form the Comics Magazine Company. They later renamed it to Centaur Comics when they sold the ownership, and it would feature a character called Mr. Mystic, who's probably one of the first heroes created as a modern superhero type by Siegel and Schuster, who everyone knows would go on to create Superman. So those two got into comics and would go on to create Superman for the competitor of the guy that gave them their first job.
nice.
The Comics magazine also featured Federal Agent, later renamed to Federal Men when they would show up in DC Comics. At issue 6, the comic would be renamed to Funny Pages. And the series also would feature a character named The Clock, who was highly regarded as the first masked superhero in comics. So we're getting
The
close to
Clock.
The Clock.
Do we have anything with him?
I don't know. I'm sure I can find something. I know I had.
If you want to
something in
keep
the
going, I
personal
can.
collection.
Oh, okay.
What was this? The Comics magazine? No, I don't think I have any of those right now. But I can find an image of them and pull it up. The Clock Comics magazine. Images. Now here he is on the cover of Funny Picture Stories. That's fantastic.
And by mask, they literally mean like a napkin or something with holes cut out of it hanging in front of his face.
Yeah. Yeah, you ain't joking.
Maybe a handkerchief, because people were classy back then.
I can't find a large image of it. If you can find a large image of him, send it to me.
I'll look.
Like, just link me to the image and I'll bring it up. But, like I said, the Clock would be the first masked hero. So really that should signal the beginning of the Golden Age, but that's typically regarded as action number 1 with Superman, which is still a couple of years off. We're still in 36 here. Centaur Comics would be the first publisher to feature comics with a single theme, including detective picture stories that would last for 5 issues. And they would include work from creators who would later become famous, like Will Eisner and Bob Kane. Will Eisner for the Phantom and the Eisner Awards, Bob Kane for Batman, and several other works. And may have continued under a different name. Detective Picture Stories, may have continued under a different name, but the details are foggy on these comics because of the way that publishers and titles and characters switch.
There you go, and check the side chat.
Alright.
At least I think it's a decent size.
If it's not, blame Eric.
I don't know what those pixel things mean when I'm looking at them.
The higher the number, the better?
Well, I vaguely understand that, but, relatively, I don't know what they mean. How's that?
The larger the number, the better? I don't know. What do you want from me? Oh my god. What did you do? What did I do? I opened them all. I don't need them. I don't need them all. Anybody still alive? Oh, Becky and
Yeah,
Matt are
well,
just having
I
a
sent you.
conversation in Discord. That's fine.
I don't know what you're doing. I sent you one link.
I clicked it multiple times trying to get it to open up, and it just opened all of them.
I gotcha.
Okay. There we go. Detective Picture Stories. I love the green hat and the blue suit with the brown shoes.
Right? It's fantastic.
That guy knows how to dress.
So if we do that Comic-Con thing we talked about, that's going to be my cosplay for it.
That's fantastic. I'll know exactly who to look for. But yes, this is the clock, ladies and gentlemen. So just take that in. That is the precursor to Superman and Batman right there. That is 100% where you got your beloved superheroes from. Anyway, they would also publish Western picture stories that lasted for 4 issues, all with Will Eisner's work in them. And then the longest running was Funny Picture Stories. They did 3 volumes, one of 9 issues, one of 11 issues, and one of 3 issues before being renamed to Comics Pages, going back to the original numbering. So I think it was 23, 24 that it started out as. Like Comic Pages 1 through 23 don't exist. And this happened all through history, folks. So when you're trying to get a complete run of something, you have to know the publication history of these books.
Yeah.
Because some of these could literally be like Volume 1, 1 through 3, Volume 2, 1 through 5, Volume 1, 8 through 10. Kind of like Detective Comics does every time they get close to a milestone.
Now, I just have to say,
What now?
positive about that.
What?
I was responding to Matt in the chat.
Oh. Anyway. Speaking of
Continue.
Detective Comics. Before I say that, I don't really need to go on anymore about Funny Picture Stories. Speaking of Detective Comics, we are at 1937. Detective Comics #1 is the first true DC comic book created by producer Major Malcolm Wheeler, and who was his cohort there? Harry Donenfeld. He was forced to collaborate with Harry because of the debt that he had for comic books. So, most of the stories in the issue for Detective Comics #1 are racist against Chinese people. Chinese people are the villain. Let's not forget Yu Wang, the king of the drug lords.
I need to go and actually finish that story now. And you know I'm going to.
Absolutely. Most of the story, yeah. One story titled Claws of the Red Dragon, written at Major Malcolm Wheeler. Another story of note is called... Hold on one second.
Okay. Let's see, where was he at?
My boy just had to come up and give me his tablet. It died.
Ah.
Okay, I'll charge it. Time to go lay down. It's late. No, you need to go to sleep, buddy.
We're doing it live, folks.
Hey, what are you gonna do? They come find you. Like you can be anywhere, but they will come find you. I could go outside. They'd come find me.
Unless you're in a supermarket.
Absolutely. Then they have other things to be doing.
Exactly.
One story called Claws of the Red Dragon, written by Major Malcolm Wheeler. Another story of note is called Slam Bradley, done by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. The character, Slam Bradley, you want to pull a picture of Slam Bradley up?
Yeah, I'll look that up.
Looks very similar to another they created, being Superman, from the opening splash page to the very different layout to the tough guy hero saves the girl, it's easy to see how this style paved the way for your typical comic hero story. By 1938, Donenfeld had bought out Wheeler and partnered with Jack Lieberwitz to form National Periodical Publications, the company that would precursor to become DC Comics. So that's it for the
Let's see,
Platinum
where's
Age,
a good...
folks.
I like this picture of Slam Bradley.
Slam Bradley.
Yeah.
Fucking Slam Bradley. What a fucking name. I do
See,
have
why don't we get comics like this anymore? This is like making me sad. I want to read this.
Hey, I did have Tip Top Comics #1. I could bring that up. But I got Joe Palooka right here.
There you go. In the side chat.
Okay. Yeah, let me.
And MK Thales says, but I don't want to go to bed.
Well, I definitely have a lot of backlog you can listen to, brother. I mean, I think I spaced that out pretty well. And we have a 2-hour show. I'm 10 minutes shy of that.
Yeah.
I think I did pretty fucking well. All things considered.
Honestly, I thought for sure we were going to go long. But
That's Slam Bradley for those of you that can see it. It's kind of a small image. Let me,
yeah, but it's a wonderful image. So
see if I can.
he's beating a motherfucker with another motherfucker.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. He literally grabbed somebody by the ankle and hit somebody else with it.
like, haven't we all wanted to do that at some point or another?
I think so.
I mean, at least on the daily when I'm at work, when my employees are being annoying, I just want to grab one of them and beat them with the other one. So,
But that's pretty much it for the Platinum Age of Comics. I've got a couple of more things we can kind of look through as far as just comic books from that era. Here is Amazing Stories from 1928. Yeah.
be nice if my screen share was working.
Hey, that's not my problem. It was working earlier.
It was, but then I switched out of Skype to search that, and now I'm getting a black screen
That's what you
because
get.
Skype hates me.
It does. But yeah, that's Amazing Stories there. 1928. We'll thumb through this real quick. This is your precursor to comic books. Let me see if I have a. There we go. That's good.
Oh, come on, Skype. There it goes. Okay, it's working now.
Yeah,
What the hell?
most of these were written with just some pictures in them. I'm gonna see if I have a copy of Detective #1 in my archives here. I think I might, but it's no guarantee because these are not the good archives. These are the old archives.
Huh.
But yeah, what do you think about all this, man? Like obviously,
It's-
I knew some of that stuff, but I had no idea that the format changed so many damn times over the course of time.
No, I had no idea. I mean, I knew about, like, the Dick Tracy and Little Orphan Annie and like that kind of stuff was around before like Superman and Batman, but I had no idea about Obadiah, Old Duck, or the Yellow Kid, like all of that weird stuff. And it kind of goes back to the idea how we kind of romanticize back then as like the quote unquote simpler times. But when it comes to that is fantastic. That Chinese man on the cover, by the way.
Oh,
Anyway, he's-
This is a reprint of Detective Comics #1 that I happen to have acquired digitally. But yeah, that's what the Chinese man on the cover looked like. And here is the interiors.
now you should pull up that cover and then pull up the cover of Trump Space Force and put them next to each other. Let's just get a screenshot of that.
Yeah. How did they keep getting away with it? So yeah, it's very
But,
very
no,
racist,
it
anti-Chinese
it harkens back.
overtones. No Batman
Yeah,
yet.
but-
Batman didn't come about to issue 27. Slam Bradley. Here we go.
But it does.
There's Slam Bradley. Bam. And look at that Chinese guy. Looks like he got a paper bag on his head. But yeah. So this is that's the major transition there, folks. Like you get something that kind of goes from a pulp novel with a lot of words and a couple of pictures to the comic book that we know and love today in about 100 years.
Which, I mean, in the grand scheme of things,
I mean, in the evolutionary
that long.
timeline, yeah. I mean, considering in 80 years it hasn't changed that much. It went through
Right.
a lot of change to get here, though, man.
I mean, now imagine if there was like the only really thing I could think to change would be like an Audible, but for comic books where you have like voice actors and
No,
the pages turn automatically while
No, they have that. There's no pages
they
involved.
do.
But yeah, it's called.
Oh.
It's not an Audible comic book. Though they do have web comics that are like sound effecty and stuff like that. But what I'm thinking of is
Yeah, I knew that.
the movies for your mind. I can't remember what the name of them are. Graphic audios, I think. My dad liked them because they were for truck drivers mainly. It's like 2 to 6 hour. Basically how we do stories, but they literally act it out like a play in voice acting.
Okay,
the
so
storyline.
like the old radio serials.
Yeah, but instead of having a narrator or anything like that, you usually just had a storyteller that was in the story, like it was following a character in the story.
Right.
Like they
I'm picturing that, but like having like digitized comic book pages, like flipping over so you could follow like the images while you're getting the different character. So like I guess technically that's just like the Justice League cartoon. Really, when I think harder about it,
Yeah.
it's
that's what you're going for. But anyway,
it's besides the point.
I think we should probably wrap it up here. It's a little after
Probably.
midnight now. Sorry, MK Thales, you don't have to go to bed, but we're not going to stay here. If anybody has any questions or anything in the chat, I'll be more than happy to answer that for the next minute or so. But we're going to start kind of wrapping it up and getting everything shut down for the evening. I appreciate everybody who came in and enjoyed this with us. It was a really interesting timeline to kind of go through.
Oh yeah.
The next one obviously will be in a couple of weeks when Ayrton gets back from vacation. You will miss his silky smooth voice for the.
You will.
I think he's going to be here next Saturday, but Sunday and the following weekend, I'm going to have some special guest co-hosts lined up. So you will still get a show. Thanks, MK. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate you coming by. You will still get a show.
Thanks, man.
The weeks that he is gone. I do have people lined up. You will just not get him unless he decides to call in. So
Yeah, I might pop in depending on how Peruvian Wi-Fi is.
look, man, don't dox where you're going to be. We probably got a Peruvian
Yeah.
assassin in the chat trying to track you down right now.
Well, it'll make the trip more interesting.
So no problem, Matt. We appreciate you coming by, man. But yeah, until next time, I guess this has been the Gospel of Comics, and you guys have a great week, and we will see you next weekend. I'm gonna play some music.
Good night, everybody.
Fuck out of here. All right, here we go. I was gonna play the intro again, give you another view on that video, buddy.
All right.
I'll see you guys again next week. Oh no, don't do that. That's not what I wanted. Damn it.
Ruh-roh.
Boomering this up.
Hey, thanks for watching, Cartoon. While he's boomering that up, I'll keep responding to the chat.
Yeah, man. Thanks. Thanks, definitely, man. We appreciate it. And here we go. That fix it, maybe. There we go.
Yeah.
Got it.
All right.
Later, guys. We'll see you next week.